What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I've got a fairly quick but very important video for you guys, and this is talking about a key hidden recoil stat that doesn't show up anywhere in the advanced stats. And this is absolutely going to affect how I create my class setups from here on out. And this is something I briefly mentioned in my Rival 9 gun guide, but we're going to get into more detail here. But this hidden stat does show up in the pros and cons lists, and it's listed as firing aim stability. Now, the reason I call it a hidden stat is when you open up the advanced stats on one of these attachments that impacts this, you won't see it show up anywhere in the advanced stats. So all of your recoil values will be exactly the same unless there's something else on that attachment that changes it. But this firing aim stability just doesn't show up anywhere. In saying that though, with my testing, I found that this has a very noticeable effect on the recoil that you experience. And oftentimes, this is actually going to give you a better benefit to your recoil than something that actually does show up in the advanced stats. So let's have a look at this, and we're going to start it off with a very high recoil gun. This is the WSP Swarm in the SMG category, and you can see our base recoil is obviously quite high. There's lots of jumps between your shots. There's also a lot of side-to-side bounce, and it tends to zigzag as it kicks upward. Next, I use the WSP Factory Stock, which harms this firing aim stability stat, but that's it. That's the only downside to this. It doesn't affect your recoil stats in those advanced stats at all, and we can already see that this is pretty significantly harming our recoil pattern here. You can see those rounds are spread out a whole lot more than the base recoil with this gun. Again, even though none of your recoil values have changed at all. But then on the flip side of that, we're going to try out the FSS Rampage stock, and this one improves your firing aim stability, but it has no impact on any of your recoil stats. However, as we can very clearly see here, it improves our recoil quite nicely. Even just compared to the base recoil here, you can see we've got a much more straight line path, there's less of a zigzag, and the spacing between your rounds is also quite a bit less on average while using this. And that's pretty impressive, and if you were just building your class setup based on what the advanced stats say with your recoil stats, it's very easy to miss out on an attachment like this that's actually providing some great benefits to recoil. Now, I do want to take this a step further to show what this means when creating class setups, and how I'm going to be changing my approach, at least with certain guns. This firing aim stability stat tends to pop up most in the stock category, so that's what we're going to be focusing on here, and I'm just going to choose a gun like the Holger 556 for instance. With this, if I were trying to build my setup for the most accurate gun possible, and I were looking at the advanced stats, it's pretty clear that the best option here is going to be the RB Adel Assault stock, because this is helping with our gun kick, our horizontal recoil, and our vertical recoil, and the values are actually pretty solid there as well. However, when I compare it to the Ascent Lord stock, this is the one that helps us with this key stat, this firing aim stability stat, and it also does help with recoil gun kick, but this is only a 7% improvement, whereas that Adel Assault stock gives us a 9.4% improvement to that, as well as improvements to our horizontal and vertical recoil control. And when we look at the comparison here, we got some pretty interesting results. Now, obviously, if we're just judging these recoil plots by the total magnitude of recoil, then that Adel Assault stock is the superior option. It isn't kicking upwards as high, because that vertical recoil stat is kicking in. And also, if you look at the overall deviation, especially with the last several rounds fired, you can see that you're not moving off of that center line quite as much with this stock, as expected. In saying that though, even though this improves your recoil gun kick more than the Ascent Lord stock, we're actually seeing more side-to-side bounce with this particular stock, and that's some of the most difficult recoil to control and predict because it's unpredictable. It doesn't really follow a set pattern or path that you can compensate for. You kind of just have to try to compensate on the fly and hope for the best. Whereas with the Ascent Lord stock, that recoil pattern is a very clean line that's quite easy to follow, and you're not really seeing much deviation at all from that recoil path. And this is just looking at the actual recoil and where your bullets land. What about the visual aspect of recoil? Well, let's have a look at the base Holger 556. I want you to focus in on that front sight and how much it's bouncing around as I'm firing. And then let's compare it to that Ascent Lord stock, which is helping us with that firing aim stability. And if you're paying really close attention here, you should notice it's not bouncing around on you nearly as much, and therefore that's generally going to make it a bit easier to track your target and compensate for your recoil as you're firing. So not only is this helping with your actual recoil plot, it's also helping noticeably with your visual recoil. So the general conclusion that I'm drawing from this particular stat is it's kind of like recoil gun kick on steroids, because the recoil gun kick, that's typically what will help with this side-to-side bounce as your gun is kicking upward, but it's pretty clear that this firing aim stability stat seems to be doing even more to that side-to-side bounce than the recoil gun kick ever does. And as a result, especially for guns that have a lot of this side-to-side bounce, I'm definitely going to be leaning a little bit more into the attachments that help with firing aim stability rather than the actual recoil stats themselves. Now, you will have to judge this on a gun-to-gun basis because some guns don't really have much side-to-side bounce at all, and therefore all you want to do is control your horizontal and vertical recoil as much as possible. Additionally, you have to also consider combinations of attachments, and maybe it's in your best interest to use one attachment that helps with firing aim stability, but then other attachments that are going to help with vertical and horizontal recoil control. At least now you should be armed with a little bit more information, so this is a stat you want to make sure you're at the very least considering while creating your class setups. And I definitely see myself leaning in the direction of firing aim stability on many of the guns in this game. And with that, that's pretty much everything I've got for you guys. Super quick video today. Just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of this. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What do you guys think about the results that I found here? Do you guys see yourself leaning more in the direction of this firing aim stability in the future? Or are you going to stick to just building for horizontal and vertical recoil control? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.